Some bands think of rock as daytime music. Others consider it a roadmap to the blackest part of the night. The Doors always took their inspiration from the darkness. Led by singer Jim Morrison, the band combined poetry and theater. They investigated places where dreams and nightmares collided. They brought an underground vision to the top of the charts. The Doors are legends. This is their story.
Bring on to the other side. Bring on to the other side. Bring on to.
During the early 1960s, California was a hotbed of rock and roll. The Beach Boys set the tone for a lifestyle of fun, fun, fun. By mid-decade, San Francisco is a haven for the hippies and their smile-on-your-brother attitude. But in Los Angeles, the Doors left flower power to rot on the vine. They looked for truth by moonlight. Separating themselves from hippie values of optimism and community, the Doors created one of rock's most ominous sounds. At the center was Jim Morrison, a film student and aspiring poet. In a theatrical moment, he called himself the Lizard King and told journalists that the Doors were erotic politicians.
I think these days, especially in the States, you have to be a politician or an assassin or something to really be a superstar.
Like the Stones in the Velvet Underground, the Doors flirted with danger. They stood for investigating the extremes of every situation.
We want the world and we want it now. Right, Mama?
Morrison's emotions were extreme, too. He could be cerebral, he could be derelict. The tension between the two sides was explosive. He reacted against all forms of authority. It made him one of the most charismatic and provocative rock stars who ever lived. One of the most bewildering, too. No one, not even the other Doors, knew what he would do next. James Douglas Morrison was born in 1943 in Florida. His father, a captain in the Navy, was fighting in World War II when his son was born. Jim's middle name was inspired by General Douglas MacArthur, but the discipline of military life wasn't his destiny. Steve Morrison's duties often kept him away from his children. The family moved frequently. By the time Jim turned 4, they had bounced from Florida to D.C. to New Mexico. He never settled into one particular environment. A chubby kid, Jim had a wild streak. He taunted his siblings, Ann and Andy, and got attention by throwing fits. And when that didn't work, he'd retreat to his books. A favorite subject was reptiles. Life in Albuquerque provided plenty of opportunity to investigate the desert creatures. Young Jim was fascinated by lizards.
I'm the Lizard King. I can do anything.
As an adult, Morrison told his friends that he had a life-altering experience at the age of 4. While the Morrison family was driving to Santa Fe one day, they came across a crash on the highway. A truck had swerved off the road and into the desert. Several Native Americans had been riding in the back. One died in the crash. Some were thrown from the truck, badly injured. The Morrisons stopped to help, and Jim couldn't take his eyes off the scene. Years later, he said that an Indian spirit took possession of him that day.
Indians scattered on Dawn's highway bleeding. Ghosts crowded in child's fragile eggshell mind.
In high school in Virginia, Jim shunned hobbies and sports. He was a class clown who loved the satire of Mad Magazine, but managed to get good grades. An IQ test placed him in the genius range. He investigated philosophy, mysticism, and art. Jack Kerouac's On the Road was a favorite book. Morrison was attracted to an anything-goes kind of freedom. Soon, Nietzsche was also on his reading list. He often rebelled against the middle-class life his family lived. Jim relished the chance to be on his own in college. First, he went to school in Florida, where he read incessantly. He was intrigued by texts that dealt with the psychology of crowds. At one point, Morrison urged some friends to help him start a riot, just to see what the outcome would be. They declined. Against his parents' wishes, he transferred to UCLA to study film. He told his friends that film was where the unconscious part of life was most eloquently expressed. Morrison was taken with two kinds of motion pictures, surrealism and cinema verite. He was fascinated by the difference between sensual dreams and blunt reality. Jim made one film while he was at UCLA. He got a D on it. He fell in with several students who were dedicated to art, and some who made an art of partying. One pal was in a band with his brothers on the weekends. His name was Ray Manzarek. Ray liked Jim. He thought Morrison was witty, devilish, and smart. Manzarek's group, Rick and the Ravens, was a bar band. They did tunes like Louie Louie, and they'd invite fellow students up on stage to sing along. One night at a local bar, Jim joined too. But he was shy and didn't do much more than shake a tambourine. After graduation, Morrison took an apartment in LA's bohemian neighborhood, Venice Beach. There he read the poems of Rimbaud and wrote his own verse. He told one friend he wanted to start a band. "I never went to concerts," he said, "but I heard in my head a band and singing and an audience." He slept on rooftops near the ocean. He crashed at friends' houses. Morrison was living the poet's life. The afternoon he bumped into Ray Manzarek on the beach changed both of their lives.
School was finished. We had nothing to do, and Jim was going to New York. I was going to stay in Los Angeles. And about a month into the summer vacation, who comes walking down the beach but Jim Morrison? And I asked him, "What are you up to, man? I thought you were going to New York." He said, "No, I decided to stay here and write some songs and stuff." I said, "Well, go ahead, sing one of the songs." And then he did Moonlight Drive. And I thought the words are just amazing.
Let's swim to the moon. Let's climb through the tide. Penetrate the evening that the city sleeps too high. Let's swim out tonight, love. It's our time to try. Heart beside the ocean on our moonlight drive.
Jim needed someone to believe in him and help him set his words to music. He moved in with Ray and began to work on songs. They called themselves The Doors, after Aldous Huxley's book, The Doors of Perception. Huxley's title itself came from William Blake's line, "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite." At first, the Doors had no drummer. That changed when Manzarek met John Densmore at a meditation class. John was an inventive drummer without a regular gig. He was playing fraternity parties for pocket money when he met the Doors. Together with a bass player, Morrison, Densmore, and the Manzarek brothers cut a demo tape that included Moonlight Drive, Hello, I Love You, and a tune called Go Insane. Columbia Records signed the group, but then dragged their feet about recording sessions. It was clear the band was not a priority. Disheartened, Ray Manzarek's brothers went back to their day jobs. It looked like the Doors were finished. In fact, they had not yet started. In the next remarkable year, the Doors would bring Jim Morrison's vision to life. Jim Morrison, Ray Manzarek, and John Densmore wanted to keep the Doors together, but they had lost two members and were getting no support from their record company. Densmore said he knew a good guitarist, Robbie Krieger.
When I first